Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Art for Maths Books. In today's episode we're going to be drawing this handsome little beast, the House Sparrow. One of my favourite birds, and I love watching them and hearing them. I've got loads of childhood memories linked to House Sparrow, so I'm very happy to draw one today. And we're welcoming on as our special guest John, who is known as the early birder, somebody that is full of stories, and I always love listening to them, and he's got loads of facts that he's going to share with us today as well. Now, what we're going to do in the top corner is if you mark a little L in the left hand side and then an R on the right hand side, that's going to help you for when I'm giving you instructions if you don't know your lefts and rights. What we want to do is make sure that we get this fairly central on the page. Now, they're not all that big, but we're going to try and get it fairly central. So from the very top of the page, I'm going to count down 9 squares. And then from there, I'm going to count in 3. So 2 or 3 in, and you'll be absolutely fine with this design. From that point, if you count down 3 and mark there, I'm going to draw the entire outline of the bird to start with today so that you can see what we're working with. Now we want to count down 3 and left 1. And then down 3 and left 2. Then down 2 and left 3. So then down 1 and left 3. And then count 8 to the left. Now I'm doing this really nice and slowly so that you've got enough time to watch, count and do your dots. So from here we're going to draw the tail. We want to move down 4 and left 5. And then from there, 1 dot to the left, and then 1 dot up. From here, we want to move up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then right 6. So that's now going to be the top of the tail, and this will make more sense when we colour this, well, fill this in later. Almost do dot to dot. Now we're going to move from the latest point 1 to the right and 2 up. And then 2 to the right and 3 up. And then 2 to the right and 2 up. And then 3 to the right, 1, 2, 3, and then 2 up. Then 3 to the right, 1, 2, 3, and 1 up. So now we're going to draw the beak of the house sparrow. So let's just go 1 up. It's going to be looking back over his shoulder. So from here we want to go back to the left. It's 2 to the left and 1 up. Then 2 to the right and 2 up. Now from here we're going to go 2 to the right and 1 up. And then just 2 to the right. Then we're going to come back down. So we're going to go 1 and 1. So one to the right and one down. So that's it, that's the complete outline, and like dot to dot we're going to fill this in. Now I'm going to use a ruler, you can too, you don't have to. And while this is on screen, what I'd like to do is ask John, the early birder, to introduce himself. Hi John, thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to hearing some of your stories. What do you do?
Well, from a very early age, I got up early. I would always leave the curtains open, and the moment that the sun rose and I could hear birds, and quite often it would be the sparrows, I'd be out of bed. And I used to jump on my bike and I used to cycle from Harrow, where I lived in sort of suburban London. I'd cycle from Harrow all the way up to Castlebury Park in Watford. And I'd go bird watching with this huge pair of binoculars that had been given to me by an uncle. I just loved the exclusivity of being out early in the morning. There was no one else about. And of course, the thing is, birds are very active at that time of day. So I got to hear all the bird song. There wasn't the traffic noise that you get. There wasn't the disturbance of people. And I just love it. And I've never had a problem getting up first thing in the morning and going out. I don't feel the need to have a lie-in. I am a lark. You know, we all have our chronotype, don't we? And for me, I'm definitely a lark. Not so much a night owl, but I just love getting up early. So that's where the early birder came in. I did miss once an appointment to be on time for sort of birding, and I got the nickname the nearly birder because I was late once, but and I've never lived that down. But most of the time, and do you know what? In all my life, I've never used an alarm clock, ever. My body clock it's really weird actually. At one point, I used to wake up at 5:18. It's just there, it's in me, and I don't know how it works. I don't know how your circadian rhythms work, you know, the daylight and the nighttime. Even in the winter when it was dark, I'd still 5:18.
Wow.
And in fact, I've been working at a school, and I commute very early in the morning. I've never been late. I always get to work early and do all my work prep, and that's it. So getting up early, that's what I do.
Awesome, thank you. And I've heard some of your stories firsthand, so I'm looking forward to you sharing some with everyone today. So let's move on with the tutorial. From this point here, we're going to make a little bit of a triangle, really. So from the middle of the point on the head, we're going to go like this, make a little almost rectangle, and then fill it in like so. Now we're going to put a line straight across. And then from the edge of that triangle, we're going to go down one and right one, so we can carry that line through. So in the bottom left of the triangle, I'd like you to count down one and left one, and then from there count back to the right one and down one, then to the right one, and then up one. And we're going to make a little a box on an angle here. From that latest point, go to the right one. And then if you just follow along what's happening on the screen. So nice and simple, we've got a box with an angle with a line coming out of the end there. So from the end of this line, if you come back on yourself, we go down one and left one. And there's another really simple dot to dot here. Again, you can use rulers if you want to. I just thought I'd show different ways of drawing. Sometimes I use ruler, sometimes I don't. Now it gets a little bit complicated here. From the point there, you just want to come down one, and we're going to connect to this dot here. So it might be helpful to use a ruler. If not, go freehand, but I'm going to use one because it gets a little bit tight once we get two lines coming down to the bottom. Okay, just like so. So let's start putting this beak together. From the left hand side of your box on an angle, we're just going to count 1 to the left and then down 1 and right 1. So we're going to join these up again, dot to dot, so probably easiest if you watch on screen what we're going to do. So within the top of the beak here, I'd just like to create a little bit of difference, create some shadows really. So from the bottom right point, we're going to go up to the top left, and from the bottom left, we're going to go up to the bottom right. Again, easiest if I show you on screen. So they're going to cross over lines like that. Okay, now from the bottom of the beak, if you count to the right 1, and then from that point, if you count down 1 and place a dot, and then down 1 and right 1, and then right 2. So this is now going to be filled in like this. So while I'm doing that, time for another question for John. John, why are house sparrows so special for you?
Well, house sparrows, I sort of grew up with house sparrows. They're my earliest memory of a bird. In fact, I can remember sitting, and this going back a long way now because I'm now retired, which is a scary thought, but I remember looking at house sparrows when I was in a high chair. And it was at Battersea Fun Fair, and I had a handful of bread, and in that sort of congealed grey way that bread goes when toddlers are holding it, the sparrows were all lined up along the edge of the table looking at this bread. And I've actually seen cine footage that my dad took at the time of me staring at these house sparrows, and you can actually see the fascination for sparrows where it began for birds, but sparrows in particular. And they showed no fear, and I was just completely fascinated by them. You know, when you start to wonder where your love for a particular thing begins, I can see it there in my eyes in that cine footage. I just love sparrows.
Yeah, me too. Like I said, I've got lots of memories of them growing up. Really happy when I see them as an adult as well. So back on with the tutorial, we're going to count from this point. We're going to go down 2 and then right 2. And there's going to be a diagonal line and then just a little section there. So from here, we're going to go down 1 and right 1. It's going to be his almost bib here. So hopefully you can start to see the head of the house sparrow now. Now in the wonky box, we're going to draw an eye. Now don't stress about this, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to use the squares to draw sort of equal parts around like this. And there we go, there's a head complete. House Sparrow looking back over his shoulder. Now from this point, if you count down 1 and right 1, and then right 1 more, and then right 2 and up 1, we're going to connect these together now. There we go, well done. So from this point, count down 2 and right 1. And again, these are going to join up nice and simply now. So from the bottom point that we've drawn there, if you just count up 1 square, and then right 2 and up 2, and then we're going to join it up so we've got some nice equal lines going. Okay, great. So then from this point, count down 2. Left 1 and up 1, and then left 1 and down 1 to create another little triangle. From there, count left 3. And then down 1 and right 1. And then right 2. Now this is a bit of a complex one because sometimes you don't know which dot to dot you're doing. So if, again, follow along on screen, it'll be nice and simple for you. So yeah, John, just carrying on from where we left off, I love them because outside the front of my house when I was growing up, there was a colony of house sparrows, and I just love hearing them chirp away.
It's that sound, isn't it? It's the. Do you know what I've noticed? That if you watch old TV programs, you can hear sparrows chirping in a way that you don't hear them now. So you know, whether it's reruns of Minder or these old sort of the professionals, if they're walking down the street, you can actually hear the sparrows. And they used to sort of chirp outside the bedroom window. When I was a teenager, I remember just listening to the sparrows that nested in the roof opposite. Mm-hmm. And I actually used to feed the sparrows at St James's Park. So if you the bridge that crosses over the lake at St James's Park opposite Buckingham Palace, you used to be able to stick your hand out with some seed or a piece of bread, and the birds would fly to your hand and feed. And again, it's that sort of interaction with a really wild bird, but it trusts you enough to come and feed from your hand. And I can still actually feel the grip of their feet and the claws, the tiny claws on my finger. You see, that's an early memory of just interaction with wildlife that stays with you for life.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Completely agree with you. Thank you. Okay, now from this point, we're going to count down 1 and left 1. Then we're going to count down 3 and left 3. So you can see it's going to create a straight diagonal line. Let me know if you've got any house sparrows nesting next to you, whether you've got any stories about house sparrows. I'd love to hear them. Now from the point that we went straight over, count down 1 and right 1. And then we're going to move to the right 2. And then we're going to mirror this underneath. So just 1 square down, go down 1 and right 1, and then to the right 2. And this will make more sense when we've joined these dots together. Couple more to do now. So from the end, we're going to go down 1 and right 1, and then from there you can move up and go right 1 and up 1 and join together like this. Then from the end of each one of those, well, from this point here, so we're going to move to the right 2. And from the first of these, we're going to go to the right 1 and then up 1. This is just bringing together the wing now. Now we're going to draw a straight line down here. Like I always say in these episodes, this doesn't need to be perfect. You can mess up, you can go slightly wonky with your lines, absolutely fine. The main thing is that you are enjoying this. We've got something a bit different for the bottom one. Just count to the right 1 and draw a line. And then this is going to be blocked in like this. And from that latest point, we're going to count down 2 and then across 4. Now, you can see art's not all about being perfect. Here, you can see I've had to rub out and start again because I went slightly too far. So don't be shy about getting it wrong. We're doing it in pencil, so you can always rub it out. And even if you did it in pen, there's ways that you can just phase it out. So don't panic, just enjoy this whole process. Now we're going to create a point to the bottom there, like this. And from that point, you're going to count right 3 and up 1. And then from that point, count right 2 and down 1. And this is going to join like this. So then from the top of the tail here, I'm going to move up 1. And that's going to be a straight line all the way across the bottom. And another big straight line coming up now. Then from that latest point you've created, just count up 1 and then come down diagonally like this. And then from there count right 2 and up 4. Now here I'm going to count diagonally up 5, but you can count across, you can count to the right 5 and then up 5 as well if it's easier for you. Now these points are going to be connected like this. Now from this point on the left hand side, we're going to count 6 up and 6 right to create another diagonal line for sort of the top of the wing here. Then I'm going to use my ruler again just to connect these 2 dots. Now this part gets a little more complicated, so I'm going to zoom in for you. From this point here, just move 1 to the right, so you've got 3 in a row there. And we're going to connect that up with 1 straight line. And then from the end of that line, go to the right 1 and up 1. Now we're going to make a bit of a jagged circle here. From that point go right 1 and then go down 1 and right 1, then down 1, then down 1 and left 1, then left 1, and then left 1 and up 1. So you can see this creates a bit of a circle here. And while we fill this in, let's just ask John where in the world you can find house sparrows.
Well, they have a real global distribution. They're a species that has actually followed humans around the globe. And you can find house sparrows almost in every continent, I think. Certainly throughout Europe, North America, Africa. You know, most of the time they feed on seeds and so on. In the breeding season, they're into insects. But do you know what? They're real opportunists. So wherever humans are, that's where you find house sparrows. We provide them with nest sites, we provide them with food, and they'll take anything. I've seen house sparrows at the zoo in London feeding on bones and carcasses left out for the lions, just picking at the little morsels of meat off the bones. You know, they will see a food opportunity and take it. And you know, that's why I think they're so successful, and why wherever we are, they are.
Thanks very much, John. Some great bits in there. So to carry on with the tutorial, from the new point that we've just made, we're going to count down 5 and left 5 and create a new point there. And these are going to be joined up. And once you've done that, we're going to go down and create another point. And then add right into the middle of the point we just made. Okay, so onto the breast. We're going to come down from the point there 3 and then left 2. And then from there come down 3 and left 4. What this is going to do is give you some really nice opportunity for creating a bit of light, for creating some shadow across the breast of the house sparrow. So now join these dots up. Now this part's a bit different. What we're going to do is just line the ruler up with the part on the bottom, the square on the bottom, to the end of the line you just drew, but only take it to this line here. Okay, so from the junction you've just made, you can actually just come down 1 square. And that's going to connect right down to the bottom with the sort of diagonal line. And then to the point on the top as well. So you can just see this point here. Alright, awesome, nearly finished with this one now. So there's a couple more bits on the bottom, a couple more squares here. If you move 1 to the right and do a dot, and then next to the dot you've just done, move 1 to the right and then 1 to the right again. And what we're going to do is create 2 diagonal lines. And then both of the ends of those diagonal lines are going to come right to the top of the house sparrow here. So that's it. Apart from the feet, that is it, and hopefully you've got something that looks a little bit like this. If there are wonky parts, don't worry about it. This is what art's about, or remember, it's all about making mistakes. The feet are really, really simple. I'm not going to go into massive detail on them, but from this point here, if you just count down 1 and then to the right 3 and place a dot, and then from that point count 4 and place a dot, and from the first one that you made, the first dot that you made, count back left 3. Now again, I'm going to use my ruler here to connect these 3 dots up. And then from the bottom of the house sparrow, connect down to the middle point on that new line that you just created. Now, to create the feet, we have to kind of break the squares here. So I'm going to put a line halfway up the square from each of the end dots that we've just made. And then halfway up from the center dot as well. And you can see I'm just going to fill in the 2 end ones. Now, the one on the back isn't going to cross over the line coming down from the bird that you've made. And what you want to do is create a new line from sort of the same distance down to that middle dot that you just made, and then all the way to the end. Alright, so that is our house sparrow. Brilliant. So what I'm going to do now is decorate this. I'm going to colour it in. I'm going to use colouring pencils, but you can use whatever you like. Let your imagination run wild. You can take inspiration from the Swift video. However you'd like to see this filled in, do it. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to speed up the video, but then also ask John a few more questions all about house sparrows. Now, I'm really interested in sort of nesting birds, where they nest and what they're like. So, John, can you tell us a bit about how and where house sparrows might nest?
Well, house sparrows nest in our buildings mainly, and underneath the eaves, any little gap in the roof space, particularly where the gutters meet the base of the roof, they can access buildings. They build a very untidy nest. I've actually seen house sparrows that have nested in bushes. When I was a kid, there was one particular bush in our local park that had a whole house sparrow colony in it. The main colony was in a sort of a pavilion, and they were all in the roof space there, but obviously it was overcrowded, so they were nesting, the overspill, if you like, were nesting in these bushes. And they were big untidy nests. I mean, the nests themselves are just a mass of material, anything they can find, mainly sort of dry grass and stuff, but bits of plastic. I remember one house sparrow that nested in the rooftop next to my bedroom, and it reminded me of those aircraft. Those aircraft you see flying past with banners, like,
Yes.
I love you, or, the FA Cup final winners or whatever. They've got a banner up. Well, this particular house sparrow, I don't know where he was getting it from, but he was stealing toilet paper from somewhere, unused, I hasten to add, but it was streaming behind him like a banner. And he just kept disappearing into the rooftop next door with he's like the Andrex puppy. Just going in there with these great big bits of toilet paper. But you know what? They'll nest anywhere. They will use nest boxes. I've had them at Little Orchard use nest boxes. But they need to have quite a large entrance hole, sort of larger than for a blue tit. But to be honest, they are really, I've seen them nesting in lampposts, near St James's Park, anywhere that there's a sort of safe place where they can be dry and they can just stuff it full of material that they find. And they're very, I tell you what was a common one, behind ivy. I remember up at Harrow on the Hill, there was a wall near Harrow School, and it was covered in ivy, and it had a huge house sparrow colony in it. So they love anywhere like that, and they also love really tightly clipped hedges. So things like privet hedges that they can sit and roost in, and just sit and chat to each other a lot of the time. They like the cover, but if they've got somewhere secure and a nice tight privet hedge nearby, that's perfect for a house sparrow.
Yeah, it's definitely part of their success that they're so adaptable. Okay, so next question for you, John. How can you tell a male house sparrow apart from a female house sparrow?
Well, the male has that lovely grey cap and the dark bib. The sort of very sort of, it's I'd say black bib, but it's actually more a sort of really dark chocolatey brown colour. And they have that streaking on the back as well. The female lacks that grey cap and the black bib, and tends to be sort of more just sort of a pale brown tan colour with the streaking on the wings. But they are, I have to say, the male house sparrow is a really handsome bird, in terms of its markings. I mean, I love them both. I think the female's coloration is very subtle, and I love it equally. But I think they are a handsome species that often is overlooked when people talk about beautiful birds. If you see a pair of house sparrows in full prime breeding condition and plumage, they are absolutely stunning birds.
Yeah, they really are, and it's not just about how they look, but it's their personality as well. They're so cheeky and brave. They'll come right up to you, and they'll just take over. I absolutely love them. And on top of house sparrows, we've obviously got tree sparrows. Can you tell us sort of a bit about them and some of their distinguishing features?
Well, the tree sparrow, the main thing for me is that there's no difference between the sexes. Not really evidence, but it's the fact that the house sparrow has the grey crown, and the tree sparrow has a real chestnut sort of cap, and has a lovely sort of cheek spot just on the side of its face that really stands out. But it's that chestnut cap in the tree sparrow. Tree sparrows also tend to be a little bit smaller, and their call is a little bit sharper, sort of a tick tick tick, slightly different sound that they make, a more clipped sound than the house sparrow's chirp. But I've seen them together at, for example, Welney, where they come to the feeders there. And you really can see the difference between the two species there, but also how they get along quite well. It's also interesting that, I mean, tree sparrows are in real decline in the UK and are very, very scarce, certainly in my part of the country, in the Chilterns. But if you go to somewhere like China, Beijing, they are the dominant species. They seem to take over from the house sparrow. Certainly in urban areas, there were tree sparrows everywhere. Really, really common, which is an interesting thought as to why are they so scarce here? What's the difference? Tree sparrows, nest in cavities in things like old oak trees, very much a farmland bird here, more than an urban bird. But I've seen, I've got a friend who has them nesting in their garden, and they nest in nest boxes on the side of the house, just like house sparrows would. So it's just interesting as to why they've declined. But there is a real difference between them. And again, a really smart bird. Tree sparrows are lovely birds.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like people to know about house sparrows at all?
Well, I think the thing is that most people sort of associate them with London, and they'll talk about a Cockney sparrow. And actually, the fact is that since my childhood, sparrows have declined enormously. So if you went and stood on the bridge at St James's Park now, you wouldn't see any house sparrows. In fact, if you stuck your hand out, you're more likely to get a parakeet land on it. So I think most people assume that sparrows are still quite common and that they're everywhere. But actually, they're red listed. So, they are declining, and we're trying to find out why they're declining. But I think that's the thing that people find most surprising, is that just how scarce they are. And in fact, I always think it's ironic that probably the best place to see house sparrows now in London is actually the zoo, where there, of course, are animals and lots of spilt food, and they're great opportunists. And I know that they've spent a lot of time encouraging the house sparrow colony there, so they've put up nest boxes and so on. But how ironic that a bird that was once so common and associated with London is now so scarce. There are a few isolated colonies, but as I say, in my childhood, just sparrows were everywhere, and that included the suburbs and central London.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's ask you a human question for this. So if this sparrow, or if a sparrow had a human job, what would it be?
Well, the thing about sparrows is that they are real opportunists. And I always think that, they take advantage of things. They know how to be successful. So I think a house sparrow would be a life coach. It would show you how to do things, how to be successful in life, and how to make the most of being, they're sparrows, but look at what they can achieve. Look how they've sort of not quite taken over the world, but they've lived alongside us for centuries. They managed to be successful. So if they were going to have a job, they're cheeky, they get away with things, we love them, they've got great personalities, and I think we could learn a lot from them. So I would say a house sparrow would make a great personal trainer, a life coach, a mentor. That's the job that I think house sparrows would have.
I've got to say, John, I think you've absolutely nailed that job. The professional life coach for house sparrows, absolutely perfect. Always talking, cheering you on, completely hit the nail on the head. So have you ever seen a baby house sparrow, and what was it like?
I've seen lots of baby sparrows. So the recently fledged baby sparrows, they have very similar plumage to a female, but what gives them away is the little yellow marks at the base of the beak, which are there to sort of stimulate the parents to feed them. And in fact, I used to watch the recently fledged house sparrows at the zoo when I was a kid, and I always remember the ones in the giraffe house. They were the ones that were more interesting than the actual giraffes. And the sparrows used to nest in the mangers of hay, and the babies used to jump out and be sort of just fluttering around the hooves of the giraffes. And they were being fed on flies and insects that were attracted by the animals. So baby house sparrows, I've seen lots of sort of fledged ones, but also because of where sparrows nest, the nests themselves can be quite precarious. So sometimes, unfortunately, tiny babies do fall out, and obviously often don't survive the fall. but sometimes they do. And actually, I was at a farm recently where I was in a barn, and it was an open day, and someone came up to me and they said, "Oh, look, there's a little baby bird. We found this baby bird." And it was a baby sparrow, and it had hardly any feathers. It had a few little pin feathers around the back of its neck. So we fed it on gloop. It was cold, so we warmed it up, fed it on gloop, a sort of mixture of sort of mushed up insects and a little bit of sponge cake and so on, and kept it alive for about 24 hours. And it grew an enormous amount, even just in one day. And then we took it to the wildlife hospital, and they took it from there, and they gave us a little reference number, and we were able to get an update on it, and it was doing very, very well. So it would certainly have died if we'd left it there just in the hay. The parents would have just abandoned it. So I've had a real close-up experience quite recently of a baby sparrow. I absolutely love them.
Oh, how cool is that? What an experience to have, and well done. And well, you mentioned gloop there. You've had some gloop. What do house sparrows eat generally?
House sparrows are absolute omnivores. They are granivorous during the winter, so they eat seeds that they forage very often in stubble fields associated with farmland. But in the summer, they will eat insects. And in fact, one of my memories of house sparrows living in an urban area was seeing them flying up into the air to catch flying ants. You know, the flying ant day was a big day for the sparrows because they were relatively easy to catch, and you'd see the sparrows jumping off the roofs and going up into the sky to catch the flying ants. So a lot of insects. They take anything from bird feeders and so on. They really like the suet, balls and so on. But the other thing is that unusually I've noticed that they eat blackberries, and there was a real cluster of blackberry bushes along a lane recently that I was looking at them, and the house sparrows all flew up from the bush and sat along the top of it, and I looked at them with my binoculars and thought I'd seen a new species because they all had purple faces where they'd been digging into the blackberries to get at either the flesh or the seeds. But it's quite unusual because not many birds actually do eat blackberries. Bullfinches like them when they've all shriveled up and they can get at the seeds, but not many birds take them when they're ripe. So again, real good example that sparrows will take advantage of a new food source.
Yeah, it's so true. I was in Suffolk recently and sat on Pebble Beach there and sat on the wall, and these house sparrows are coming so close to us, and they were just cleaning up whatever people were dropping. So people eating fish and chips and stuff from bakeries, all sorts, and they were just cleaning up. It was spotless. But I love the idea of a purple-faced sparrow as a new species, so keep an eye out for that one. Okay, so if this sparrow was to go into a cafe, what would it order?
Well, apart from everything on the menu, I think house sparrows would order bird cake, because bird cake was a recipe that I learnt from the fabulous Tony Soper's book, the Bird Table book, which was one of my favourite childhood books, and I used to pester my parents to help me to make it. And it was a mixture of everything from food scraps and seeds and peanuts and sunflower hearts, just anything you could get your hands on really. And you'd mix it all up in a bowl and then add either suet or lard, and then put it in the fridge, let it solidify, and then in the morning I would go outside and tip it out onto the bird table. And the sparrows, literally, they all used to sit in the first apple tree. I could just make out their sort of little fluffy forms as they were sat there, and by the time I'd come back into the house, they had all flown down, and they just loved it. They demolished a whole bowl of bird cake in a day. So I was making it almost every evening. So without doubt, if house sparrows went into a cafe or a restaurant, they would order bird cake, in my opinion.
All right, well, I'm going to be making bird cake this winter, definitely. I'm not going to be putting it on tables, though. The RSPB last year updated their guidance, not recommended against it, but I think they've stopped all sales of bird tables. So I'll make some sort of ball-shaped ones and put it in one of the suet feeders, maybe. So, John, I've really, really enjoyed having you as a guest. Thank you so much for your time. It's been brilliant and loads of great stories in there. I think people will enjoy that. There's one last thing for you, though. Would you like to name our house sparrow here?
Well, in my opinion, there's only one name that this sparrow can be called, and that is Jack, after the character in the Pirates of the Caribbean films, Johnny Depp's character, because I think it's an entirely appropriate name. I mean, they're real opportunists. They take advantage of situations. They get through scrapes unharmed. They always seem to come out the other side. So I think Jack Sparrow would be an absolute perfect name for this character.
That's absolutely spot on, John. Thank you so much. And I'd like to let everybody know that John picked the name for Jack the Sparrow before Jack from last week's episode, Jack Badams, picked the name Taylor for the Swift, for Taylor the Swift. Absolutely amazing that they've both come up with the same idea. Thank you so much, John, for joining us. I've really enjoyed your speaking with you, and thanks for all of your stories. So there we go, guys. There is Jack the Sparrow. What a great little character. Really resourceful, a little bit cheeky, will eat anything that comes to him. Thanks so much for joining me on this. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got some great creations there. I'd be really interested, genuinely interested to see what you've created, whether you've used pen or pencil, paints, colouring pencils, again, pen to fill it in, whether you've done anything on the background. That's something else that you can do. Just let your creativity run wild, and please send them in to me. I would really be interested to see them. You can send them in through my social media, so it's at Luke Weston Art, and I'll share anything with everybody's permission and get loads of sparrow drawings out there. So I really hope you've enjoyed this episode drawing Jack the Sparrow, or Jack the House Sparrow. It would mean a lot to me if you would subscribe to my channel, share this with anybody that you think might enjoy it, whether it's children, adults, young adults, grandparents, anybody that wants a bit of creative time and just wants a little bit of guidance to create something unique. Remember, I'm going to give you the guidance, I'm going to give you the outlines, and then it's for you to just let your creativity run wild. So that would mean a lot to me. If you haven't already, jump back to last week's episode with Jack Badams, where we drew Taylor the Swift. Very different style, and there are some amazing facts on there. Next week we've got somebody called Georgia, Nature with Georgia, and we're going to be drawing the barn owl. So make sure you tune in, like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.